Hello and welcome back to another episode of Weekly Waypoint, a show where I talk about my week and the things that interest me. Today we are playing Worms 2 Armageddon. Oh, actually no, it's not Worms 2 Armageddon, that's a different game. This is Worms Armageddon. If you go look at the Wikipedia page for Worms games, there is a long and bloody history of remakes and reused titles, and it gets a bit confusing. So just to clarify, this is the second Worms game ever made, I think remastered for PC or ported in some variety or updated from the original version in some way, but this is the second entry in the series. It's a lot of people's favourite entry in the series. You go look at reviews for other Worms games and most of the negative reviews are just people going, it's not Worms Armageddon, and yeah, well done champ, you figured it out. But for me, maybe it's because I grew up with the very original Worms. I think this was probably a bit more popular than last week's Worms entry. But this isn't my favourite Worms. For starters, it's a bit aged. Like, the art style's aged very well, I must say. And they've clearly used it as a basis going forwards. But in terms of like the actual game itself, I had to download a mod to make the main menu between games, which for some reason is kind of like a separate thing, not be forced into like 800 by 600 resolution. There's no way to rebind the controls. I look up guides and people are like, just download a key remapper, idiot, and it's like, well, okay. First of all, what's with the attitude, and second of all, I'm already using a key remapper for Final Fantasy XIV, I'd rather not mess up any more keybinds. Don't be an anus. But the thing that really grinds my cheese about this one is you can't zoom the camera in. I've looked over the controls because I mean I'm using basic controls, so like you'd assume it would be scroll mouse wheel up, right? Nope. And I've looked over the controls. There's like a little wiki page for all the key bindings. A control F, type zoom, nothing. There's just like nothing to zoom the camera in, so it's just zoomed all the way out the entire time, which makes it look a lot smaller. I mean, that's an obvious way of putting it, but I damn well wouldn't have made that mistake in the Worms Reloaded if I'd been able to have the camera right up in my face. I'd have seen the little tiny pixels in front of me. But enough whinging, because it is still fun. It is still a good Worms game, and I still had fun recording this, and I will still occasionally go and play Worms Armageddon over other entries, because it has its own flair, and, you know, probably the most amount of weapons. Maybe not in any Worms game, but definitely in any good Worms game. We're gonna get to some stinkers later. Actually, maybe just one stinker. I keep changing my opinion of Worms Revolution. But, yeah, Worms Clan Wars exists, and we will talk about it in a few weeks. Also, hey, we're a little ways into the match already, but feel free to leave a comment letting me know which team you think is going to win, which is your favourite team, which game has the best MMO class design. If you say RuneScape, I will have concerns for you, but it's understandable. Oh, and one more Worms related thing. I got Reese Worms Reloaded because, spoilers, it's my favourite Worms game, and it was on sale, and I was like, it was like £1. I was like, just take this Worms game so we can play it together. And we tried. However, here's a problem with Worms Reloaded. The netcode is anus. We were trying to play a match, and first of all there was like a 5-second delay between anything going on, and second of all, did I say second of all already? Oh my god. Sorry, I've only had 4 hours of sleep. And second of all, at one point in the second match it completely desynced and just told me that Reese had exploded on the spot when he hadn't. So that's a problem. And I mean, Reese's internet was playing up that night, so I will factor that in. But also we were able to play Fortnite together earlier, and you think that would have more things going on in terms of input and stuff, you know, to have a 5-second delay. So I've got him Worms Revolution instead, and hopefully we can play that together. Because Worms WMD is leaving Game Pass! Maybe today, I don't remember when. It was sometime in the next few days when I looked the other day. That was a lot of usage of the word day. I do own Worms WMD on Steam, so it's not the end of the world for me. But I might have to look into getting a match recorded on Xbox before that leaves, because I don't want to re-download it on PC. Anyway, what video games have I been playing this week? Final Fantasy XIV, surprise. Surprise. The Elder Scrolls Online. Ooh, okay, that's a bit different. Yeah, I'm not about to turn around and say the High Isle story is suddenly doing it for me. I think the main story of all of these expansions kind of like gets to a point where it's enjoyable, but it takes a while for me to warm up to it, and it usually takes me a couple of sittings to get through the whole thing, in terms of like I'll play a bunch now and then 3 months later I'll come back and play the rest of it. So instead of continuing my adventures in High Isle, I just decided to spin up a new character. He's called Lenwyn Iredal. He is, if you could not tell by his name, a high elf sorcerer. I have not yet made a Magicka sorcerer in that game, because I mained one on PC and I wanted to do something different when I made my Xbox account. And I originally intended to remake my Dark Elf character, but they've just announced the Arcanist class, and I think I'm going to make a Dark Elf Arcanist when that comes out. By the way, if you're interested in seeing my reactions to all that, go to youtube.com/@Kritigri shorts, and there's a couple of reaction videos of the events where they announced the ESO stuff. But yeah, that was obviously what got me back in the mood to play the game, go figure. Anyway, 2 things. First of all, I forgot how fun Magicka Sorcerer is. It might be my favourite class in the game that I've played so far. Take that for a pinch of salt, I haven't played most of them. I just know that I think I prefer it to Dragon Knight. Dragon Knight's main spammable is like this poison breath thing, and I just doesn't feel great. Anyway, the second thing is, with Lenwyn, what I'm trying to do is be more relaxed about what I do when I do it. Like, I'm not just gonna like focus main story quest and then go and do a whole bunch of other stuff. No, I'm like, if I see a side quest that interests me, I'm gonna go over and do it. I'm gonna play the game in first person mode instead of being a try-hard third person user, except for dungeons, of course. That would be a bit difficult. And I'm just trying to fall back in love with the ESO world again, instead of just seeing it as a series of chapters in a book that are not related to each other, because I think that's what's kind of killing the game for me. And so far, I'm happy to report it's working, because I'm having a brilliant time. And not just on Lenwyn, I have been back on Brakosh, and I'm not to do High Isle stuff, I've just been like, I've been doing some fishing for the fishing achievements. I finished the House of Awesomer Glories collection thing, which if you know the game, you'll know what that is. It's like a bunch of collectibles to go running around the map collecting, go figure. I've been doing some of a Season of a Dragon event, which is just, hey, go do elsewhere stuff and you'll get loot. I am kind of timid about events in the game, because I find that their events last so long and are so focused on daily repeatable activities that me just repeating the same 2 or 3 tasks every day when I log in for like 15 days, that is a surefire way to burn out my brain on ESO. So I'm going to try and not try hard this. I'm going to try and just like poke my foot in, because it is fun to get the loot. And one thing I really want to do with my return to ESO is to see it more as like a collectability MMO and less of like a story driven chapter narrative thing. And that means I'm gonna be motif collecting, baby, because that's some of my favourite stuff to do, like transmog hunting in World of Warcraft, you know? So yeah, I'm actually having a really good time in ESO, and it's because I've changed the way I play that game. I will get back to the High Isle story stuff at some point, but I just wanna cruise around the world first. Also, I did some dungeons. I don't really do many dungeon finder stuff in that game. Great sentence construction. And I forgot how fun they are. They almost remind me of Diablo 3's Greater Rifts. Not in like the whole timed thing, but just in how you're like a whirlwind of damage, just barraging through crowds of enemies and with loot explosions. It's amazing. At least that's how it is with normal dungeons. I've never done a veteran one yet. Anyway, other games I've been playing this week. Well, last night I decided to download 007 GoldenEye. Or is it GoldenEye 007? I don't remember. But this is a old Nintendo 64, I believe, game, first-person shooter based on the movie. It's very famous, and I have never played it, so I thought I'd give it the old university try, as we say here in sunny old England. I'm lying, none of us say that. Anyway, I think the gameplay has mostly aged pretty well. I've never played a game that feels as much like a movie as that game, in like the way the enemies kind of like twist over in pain when you shoot them. Like, it's almost like they're acting, but not in a way that makes it feel fake, just in a way that makes it feel true to the experience you've seen on the big screen, at least back in like the 80s and the 90s, or whenever this movie was fucking made. I don't know, don't watch movies, don't at me. It's easy to see why so many people loved this game, but I've got to admit, my enjoyment of the game died when I did 20 minutes into the second level and the game was like, do it again. I was like, no, that game needed to be re-released with a save state option because I'm not going back to it. Some games I'm like, well, actually most games I'm like, yeah, I'll probably go back to it at some point, but I'm just straight up telling you no, I'm not going back to it. It was fun to dip my toe into. Thank you. Uninstall. I also still need to play Hi-Fi Rush, that game that they surprise launched during the developer direct thing. I do have it installed on my console sitting there, so hopefully I'll have some stuff to say about that next week. In comic book news, I've just hit the point in the Spider-Man reading order list thing I use online, that's how I always say it, I know, where it recommends that I go and read a bunch of limited series. One of them is Spider-Man, which is the first one? Hang on. Okay, so yeah, the first thing was Spider-Man Fairy Tales, and I kind of skipped that. I kind of could tell it wasn't really for me when I started reading it, and I was like, I'm not just going to force myself to read this, it's a limited series, so I skipped that one. Then the next one I read, Spider-Man Reign, which really wants to be The Dark Knight Returns. It's not, but it is pretty good. It's a pretty far-fetched story, though, about an aged, I guess I should say, Peter Parker, who is quite a sad, decrepit old man. It's quite a bleak read, I'm not gonna lie, but it's... I don't love bleak stuff, as people who know me will know. I don't like post-apocalyptic fiction a lot of the time, that kind of thing. But sometimes when the mood hits just right, I will accept a bleak story. And this... You know, it's not as good as The Dark Knight Returns, but it was good enough to be enjoyable and for me to withstand the bloody depressing writing, good lord. Up next was Spider-Man Noir, which I wasn't sure how I would feel about, but actually it's a really fun read. I highly recommend it. It's only, I mean, all of these are like 4 or 5 issues each, but yeah, go read it. It's pretty fun. And then finally, for the old go read a completely separate series things, is Spider-Man 1602. It's either 1602 or 1502, give or take a century. And that's, I mean, you can pretty much guess the premise, right? Spider-Man, but in the year 1602. What a twist! And it's about them like exploring America, and some stuff goes down with a man named Norman Osborn and Peter Parker's girlfriend. Can you see where this is going? I'm only 2 issues in, and I think it's 5 issues long. I don't know if I'm going to continue it. It's pretty cool. I've got some, stuff out of it. But I don't know if I'm invested to keep reading past the first 2. But yeah, beyond that, I'm still pretty early into the Dan Slott run, and it's pretty fun. I'm also reading an audiobook because I want to read more books this year. I'm afraid it's not The Wheel of Time. We will get back to that, but I'm taking a break because otherwise I'll never read any books again. I'm reading How to Stop Time by Matt Haig, and it's a beautiful book so far. I don't really know how far through it I am. There's not really like a percentage thing or anything. I'm on like chapter 20, I think. I don't know how many chapters there are, but I'm really enjoying it so far. The premise is right up my alley. It's basically like life from the mind of someone who's got a condition which makes it so that they live for hundreds of years. They're perfectly ordinary human in every other sense of the word, but they've been alive since, well... I mean, a bunch of the story takes place in 1599, so think that time period, but there's also, like, snippets from other time periods as well. It's a really good book. I highly recommend it. Anyway, thank you very much for watching this episode. Did you guess Druid would win? Did you guess that my main class in my most played MMO would win? I'm sure there's no subconscious things going on there. Anyway, thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video. Subscribe.